Hello students and welcome back. This is part 2 of our presentation on harvesting. I'm Sage and this is the Cannabis Education Center at Holyoke Community College. On harvest day, you will be very busy, and if your plants are outdoors, it's always best to start early in the day. Usually harvest day outdoors is in the fall, sometime in October around Massachusetts, so you're going to have warm weather and you want to make sure that you're not out there in the very heat of the day. Um, you're going to cut branches about 18 inches long. So this can vary depending on your employer's specifications, but that's roughly the size that we're looking for, 18 inches long. And this can be ideal if you have a V in your branch so you can hang them on their own. You can trim a little bit as you go, trimming off the residual fan leaves that didn't get trimmed before during the cultivation period. It's good. And you could also do a wet trim around the buds. Wet trimming is trimming off the sugar leaves and the little stems that are present in the buds while your flower is still fresh. This is before drying, and you can see the shears there. You can see somebody working without gloves and how dirty their fingers are getting from that resin. So you can wear gloves or rub your hands with the coconut oil or olive oil if you want to avoid that. Once your plants are trimmed off and the branches are cut, you're going to dry them. Now, ideally, drying is in 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit for temperature and 45 to 55% humidity. If it's too damp and cool, mold can form and you can end up with bud rot, some botrytis because of slow drying. If it's too hot and dry in your drying facility, the outside of the bud can dry before the inside of the bud. You can really form this imbalance in how moist your buds are, and that can decrease quality because trichomes can degrade. You're going to also want to do your drying in a closed environment, something where you can monitor these things as well as keep it dark. UV light can degrade trichomes as well and lead to a decrease in quality. So this picture shows a branch. This is a fairly big branch and it's kind of coming out of the picture here. But we have a bar, a little rod, looks like bamboo here, and it's tucked under one of the branches for the cannabis plant. So this has been really nicely wet trimmed right here on these buds, and it's still very green, so we know it's fresh. You can see some of the yellow color too in the buds, indicating that the trichomes have changed. A close look with a jeweler's loupe would confirm that. But what I wanted to show you here was that you can have these kind of V-shaped parts of your branch so you can hang more easily. Or you can also harvest a whole plant or really big portions of the plant and dry them like this without trimming, and that is okay too. So this is a drying room in a grow facility. You can see a lot of fan leaves here, and this was been harvested, and then the trimmers will take over and do the trimming later on. So drying should be about 3 to 10 weeks. And that's going to depend on the environmental conditions of your drying room, the temperature and humidity. You do want to keep it constant. Plant density, how close are those plants and how much material has been left on them. So if you had little branches like in the first picture I showed you, they're going to dry fairly quickly. They've been trimmed. There's not a lot of material there for drying. But if you have whole branches and they're fairly closely packed together, a lot of density there, a lot of material, that's going to take a little while longer. So you also want to consider whether or not you're going to cure after you're drying. Some places, some facilities don't cure and some do. So if you are not curing after the drying process, you will probably tend to let your plants dry a little bit longer. If curing is going to take place, you will dry a little bit shorter time. So when you're done drying, after those 3 to 10 weeks are up, you're going to be trimming the buds off the stems trim off some of those sugar leaves and do all the rest of the trimming that needs to be done in curing. So how do you know at 3 to 10 weeks where you're at? Well, if you squeeze the buds and there's a little bit of a give to them, you can feel that they're dry on the outside, they're not super sticky. That's a key indication that you have perfect moisture content in your buds. So, like I said, not sticky, little bit crinkly on the outside, but has a bit of a give to it, a little flexibility. Some people also use the branches and can snap the branches. Once the small branches can be snapped easily, you know that the drying's complete. If they're still bendy, it's not done yet. So curing is done to even out moisture in the bud. This makes for a smoother smoking experience, gives better flavor and aroma. It also aids in preservation because when we cure, what we're doing is we're sealing our buds in a closed environment and allowing the moisture that's left inside the bud to come out. So it'll spread throughout, and we can monitor that and regulate it by burping our cure. So here is are some buds curing in a jar, and these have been dried. They're at 62% relative humidity. And this is a packet that will go both ways for moisture. So this is similar to the silica packets that are found in sneakers, where it will remove moisture from a box or a closed place. But this will also put moisture back in with this amazing technology. So the moisture can go both ways. If this jar was too moist, it will take the moisture from those buds. If it's too dry, it will release moisture from the packet into the environment so that they can moisten up again. And this keeps the humidity at 62%, which is ideal. You can buy these online or at various grow shops. So when you're curing, you want airtight containers so that you can make sure you have the proper amount of humidity. And this can take several weeks for humidity to become even throughout the bud. You want to check every day curing your cannabis and burp containers. This is going to vary depending on where you work, but burping can be helpful to allow for gas exchange in your container. And burping methods will vary. So some people don't burp at all. Some people open a jar. You can use mason jars. Open a jar for 30 seconds every day for several weeks and then close it. Some people open a jar for 6 hours every day, leave it, and then close it up, and then go to every other day. Some people open the jar, dump out the contents, let it dry a little bit in the air, and then refill the jar and close it back up every day for a few weeks. What you do will depend on where you work and what you need to do in your own schedule. But what the goal here is to get some air exchange in and out of the container for the first few weeks and monitor the humidity within your container. You don't want your buds to mold at this point. You've put in a lot of work, and you also don't want them to get too dry. So a thermometer hygrometer is an ideal little tool that can help you regulate that. And you can buy these little small ones on Amazon. There's one in the corner right here in the jar. And that will tell you the temperature in the jar and how much humidity there is. Also, those little packets, like I showed you, are helpful. Now, if you're working in a big facility and doing commercial cannabis growing, there's online systems to track the harvest of your grow. And Metric is the state system for inventory used by the Cannabis Control Commission in Massachusetts. So there are several videos on how to work with Metric, how to work with Metric for keeping an inventory of cannabis. And I have a link right here for a 5.5-minute video on how to keep harvest inventory on the Metric site. There are lots of videos for Metric to help train people on how to keep inventory and keep track of cannabis growing. So I definitely encourage you to check that out. There are also a lot of YouTube videos out there about the cannabis harvest, and these are two of my favorites, but you'll find many more videos. It's something that uh, a lot of people have different methods for doing, and you can get a sense of all the variations out there. So feel free to email me with any questions that you have, and be sure to check our Moodle page for assignments and what we're doing.